So you want to run an ultra, huh? That's great. Well, stick around because I got 6 tips that will change your ultra running experience and probably your life. Let's go. So when I first started running ultras, I knew nothing about the sport. I'd run, a couple half marathons and even a marathon with my daughter, but trail and ultra running, clueless, had no idea what I was getting myself into. So in this video, I'm going to share 6 things that, I've learned along my way. And I've run everything from trail races all the way up to 100-mile ultra marathons now. So I want to share that with you because these tips will probably, change your ultra running, well, they're guaranteed to change your ultra running experience, but probably change your life at the end of it. And tip number 6 is the most important, so I encourage you to stay all the way to the end for that one. And over the course of this video, we are going to be going over the 6 things. Number 1, how to train. Number 2, volume requirements, like minimum requirements. Are you going to be running too much, too little, and like kind of what the sweet spot is. Number 3, 3 runs that I recommend that pay off. Like, we don't want to be going out there and wasting our time. And then number 4, how to eat, what to eat, when to eat, drink, stuff like that. These are all just like general recommendations. And just what I've learned along the way, because I've struggled with, keeping my stomach from not getting upset, and lots of times like that could be the end of your race if you don't know how to manage it. So that's an important one. And then number 5 is what race to pick, because if you're new at this, picking the right race could be like the best decision ever, or you just might think the sport's way too tough, because that's the awesome thing about this sport is just finding what we're made of and kind of just getting out there and maybe sign up for something that you don't know that you can do. And one thing for sure about this sport is you're going to learn so much about yourself that you might not be ready for, and that's kind of beautiful. And then number 6, keeping it a secret, because it is probably the most life-changing tip that I can give through this whole video. Alright, so let's start with number 1, how to train. This is trail and ultra running. This isn't marathon running, and chances are, and I'm assuming that you are looking into running an ultra and you're not a brand new runner. If you're a brand new runner or coming off the couch or something, this might not be the video for you. This is more for someone who has been running for 6 months, maybe a year, 2 to 3 times a week, consistently. So they know how to train. It's already part of your program. So number 1 is how to train, and keep it easy. I can't stress this enough. Like, don't overthink your training. I'm going to get into volume with step number 2, or tip number 2. But number 1 is find 3, 4, 5 days a week that you can run. If you're training for something bigger like 100K or 100 miler, you might be running 6 or 7 days a week. So just go in that with the expectation that running is going to be like a big part of your life now. So that brings us to tip number 2, and this is going off of what I learned when I went through my USCA ultra running certification. So because when I started helping people and teaching people how to run, more like guiding them along their journey, I wanted to make sure that the stuff that was working for me is was correct, because everybody's different. So I invested in it and I learned a lot. And cool thing about that is what I learned that was working for me, it was pretty much right on with what they were teaching. And but I did get some little nuggets away. So first, let me go off the minimum requirements that USCA recommends. So for a 50K and 50 miler, the minimum volume requirements are 6 hours a week. So doesn't seem like too much, but the way we do it, which I'll talk into with tip number 3 with the type of runs, really pays off in the end. So putting the right types of runs into those 6 hours is what's going to get you to the finish line of a 50K or a 50 miler. For a 100K and 100 miler, they recommend a minimum of 9 hours a week. And you might be thinking, like, for a 100K, that sounds realistic. For a 100 miler, like, that doesn't seem like a lot. And that's what I thought at first too. So that's why I want to talk about the types of runs. But first, let me tell you, before we get into tip number 3 with the types of runs, I'll tell you what I do for my own personal training and for people that are similar to me that I'm able to coach. And if you want, to check out the training guides that I have available on my website at myendurancelife.com, I have everything from a 25K up to a 100-mile distance. They're linked in the comment below and pinned in the description. So that's myendurancelife.com, and you can check out any of the training guides that I have. They're template training guides, so just print them out, put them on your fridge, and follow them. Super easy. But so what works for me? If I'm training for 50K, I'm going to run the 6 hours a week. That is a good base for me. Knowing that my past history, I've been running since 2010 and been pretty consistent with it. Got into ultras about 6 years ago, and my volume increased, and so on average I try to run about 40 miles a week, which is right around 6 hours a week when I'm not training for a bigger race, and that keeps me 50K ready. One of the things that I want to note though with the volume is train with elevation profile, like for the race that you're training for in mind. Like try to match it. I try to match it as much as possible. If my race has a lot of elevation, I'm going to run a lot of hills, during those 6 hours. If it's kind of flatter, then I might work in some road running with it just to get used to that, faster turnover that comes with road running. So for 100K and 100 miler, for 100K, I'll stay with the for a 50 miler, I skipped that. For a 50 miler, I'll jump up to a minimum of 8 hours a week. 8 to 10 hours a week is what I like to run for a 50 miler. For 100K, right around there too, is 9 to 11 hours. That works for me. And then for a 100 miler, I am shooting for anywhere from 14 to 16 hours a week to help me get to the finish line. And then also with that 100-mile goal, I'm trying to get a minimum of about 10,000 feet of elevation per week for me, for the races I like to do. If you're training for a flatter race, it doesn't require that. And a simple way to figure that out is just divide the total elevation by the miles. So if your race has 10,000 feet over 100 miles, then that's an average elevation of 100 foot per mile, so work that into your race. For a 50K, 50 miler, 100K, the math is the same. Just divide it by 62, 50, or 31 miles. And that takes us to tip number 3. What type of runs are we going to do? So we've all heard about Zone 2 running. The easiest way I can say Zone 2, how to figure it out. And I do provide a rate of perceived effort chart when you download those training guides to help just, make it make sense up here, because this sport's confusing. There's a lot to figure out, and that's why I'm making this video. But the number one run that I can recommend that you do is runs that you like, runs that you enjoy, at an effort level that is fun to you, that is in a conversation pace. So if you run by yourself, just imagine you were running with a friend and that you could run at a conversation pace that whole time. If you have to slow down to hike on the hills to keep that conversation pace in play. So that is 70% of my runs. So if I'm running, 5-6 times a week, then at least 3 or 4 of those runs are going to be in that conversation pace. Mixing in a lot of hiking. The better hiker you are in ultra running, or the better hiker you are, the better ultra runner you're going to be. So in that matter, it doesn't matter the distance, from a 50K all the way to a 100 miler. So if you can mix in one day of hiking, then just pure hiking, go for it. That's one of the things I recommend with the people I get to work with. Run number 2 is hill repeats. I can't stress hill repeats enough. Hills pay the bills. And so dedicate one day for hill repeats, whether it is 20 minutes all the way up to an hour, depending on the volume you're putting in for your training. So you could probably get away with 20 minutes of hill repeats for a 50K. For a 100 miler, you might want to up it to about an hour of hill repeats, once a week through your training program. Run number 3 is the beloved long run. That's why we're here. That's why we do this sport. The better you are at your long run, the better this whole journey is going to be, the better you're going to do at your race. So dedicate at least one day a week for a 2 to 3 hour run. for 50K all the way up to 100 miler, you're probably doing a 6-hour long run every weekend. And that's, you know, kind of the backbone to this whole training. So one of the things that I like to do too when I get into my peak training for, say, 50K, 100K, 100 miler, I'll do back-to-back long runs. And my Saturday run will be double of my Sunday run. So if I run 6 hours on Saturday, I'll do a 2 or 3 hour long run on Sunday. And that's what works for me. And that's what I recommend a lot of the people that I work with too. Remember, this video is for educational purposes only. It's not a prescribed training plan. So please consult a doctor or physician before, you know, taking this and running with it. And that takes us to tip number 4, nutrition. So nutrition. Let's talk about eating and drinking. First, let's talk about drinking, because I think drinking is a little bit more important than what you're eating. Because if you're not drinking, then it's going to be hard for you to digest your food. And this is one of the things that I struggled with because I didn't understand it when I first started. And once I would get to about the 20-mile mark on every race, my stomach would just shut down. I couldn't eat anymore, I couldn't drink anymore, and then for the first couple 50Ks that I did, it was just a struggle bus all the way to the end. So what I recommend is doing a sweat loss test before you really get into this. And the sweat loss test is super simple. All you do is you take off all your clothes, you weigh yourself naked, you put your clothes back on, go for a 1 hour run. Don't eat or drink or go to the bathroom during this 1 hour run. Get home, and before you eat or drink or anything, take off all your clothes again and weigh yourself. And you'll be surprised with the amount of weight you lost just in that 1 hour through fluid loss. So for a rule of thumb, you take that. If you lost, 16 ounces, if you lost 32 ounces, try to replenish 70% of that from here on out. On every run, get used to drinking that amount of fluid. This isn't for electrolytes or anything like that. That's something you got to dial in on your own. But for the amount of fluid, try to hit a 70% replenish rate per hour of what you sweat and lose. And you might want to do this 2 or 3 times throughout the year, because in the wintertime, you're going to sweat different than you're going to be in the middle of summer. And then if you're training for a 100 miler, you're going to sweat different at nighttime than you are in the morning. So you might want to do it try it a couple times during the day and a couple times, throughout the different seasons. Okay, now let's talk about eating. Since we got our hydration dialed, or you're going to get it dialed through practice and trial and error, that's a lot about this sport, is just getting out there and being consistent and practicing and practicing and practicing. This is going to work into like a long run strategy that I figured out on my own, because like I said, I had so much problems dialing in my nutrition, trying to keep my stomach settled. And this long run strategy is what helped me figure it out. What I did is I created a 5-mile loop that I could just do over and over and over again. And on that loop, or at the end of that loop, I would park my truck or use a park bench or something like that, and I would make a makeshift aid station. And so I did this a couple weekends in a row, for a 3-hour run or a 4-hour run during my training. And every time I would try something different. I would try solid food, like real food. Like I've tried everything from sushi to Jersey Mike subs to mashed potato burritos. You name it, I've tried it. Chips, pickles, like everything. And every weekend I would try something different. And then also like race nutrition, gels, protein bars, everything like that. That would be on another weekend. And then the next weekend I would go back and I would combine them all and see, on this loop I'm going to eat nothing but race nutrition. On the next loop I'm going to eat nothing but solid food. And then I would try, also, if you have enough time in your training calendar, do it in the morning, do it at night, because what you'll notice is in the morning I like sweet stuff. I was good with like the chocolate flavors and the salt, like the sweet, mangoes and berries and stuff like that. But as the day progressed, my palate changed, and I liked the savory stuff more. The salty foods, the pretzels, the salted caramel, the salted watermelon gel. That was a gold mine when I found that. Chews or and then also you're going to get tired of eating too. So find stuff that you can eat in the morning, find stuff that's easy to eat when you get tired of putting stuff in your mouth. Because trust me, once you get 6, 7, 8 hours into a run, just swallowing becomes a chore. So you want to find stuff that, just practice. That's all I can say is just go out, try to eat. I try to eat every 20 minutes, just a snack, just to keep my stomach activated, ready to eat. When I get to that aid station, then it's game on, and I try to eat like pretty much as I can before I go back out for the next loop. Okay, so now let's talk about tip number 5, which is what race to pick. So believe it or not, this is actually really, really important. And the race you pick can make or break your ultra running experience. Whether this is your first one or your next one, make sure you sign up for a race that inspires you. This is just my opinion, but I've signed up for races that didn't really inspire me, and it was really, really easy to quit. In fact, I have a handful of DNFs on my ultra running, record, and some of them, was the right decision to stop. Like I had a hemorrhoid burst, or I tried running 100 miles with a broken rib, which just didn't work out good. But I also have a couple DNFs that just came down to I was tired of running, I didn't like the course, and I didn't want to run anymore. So pick a course that motivates you, that inspires you, that is like something that is just so cool that you can't wait to get out there and do. One of the funnest races, and the race that really just gets me going, is I ran from Flagstaff, Arizona to the Grand Canyon, and that was just the most awesome, epic race I've ever done. Starting in the mountains, looking at the Grand Canyon, seeing how far you got to go, then running all through the desert, through the trees, and then ending at the Grand Canyon. It was just an awesome experience. And then it's also fun for your crews too. If you have, my wife is my crew. She comes to all my big races, and she supports me. She goes to the aid stations, and she is my crew chief and my only support. And so it's just a neat bonding time for us. So if you're doing this with a partner, friends, family members, your wife, your husband, then just the cooler race that you can sign up for is going to be an awesome experience for them too. Because if you drag your wife out to or your husband to a track, and they watch you run loop after loop after loop after loop, now it's going to be super, super boring for you, unless you're into that. And I'm not knocking it, it's just not for me. But I'm just using that as an example. Or if it's the other way around, if you drag them out to the mountains and they're not mountain people, they might not want to come back, which will ruin your experience. And then it gets in the back of your head, like, man, I'm being super selfish. Maybe I should just stop running. And that way I can spend more time with them, because they sacrificed their time to come out here with me. So, pick a race that is inspiring for you, for them, and they'll see how much it's inspired for you, so they'll be able to make sacrifices too. Like, don't get me wrong, when they see how excited you are for this race that you've put so much time and effort into, then they will be pumped for you. But just make sure it keeps you getting out there, because there's going to be times in the middle of the week when the weather gets bad, where you just do not want to run, and it's the last thing you want to do. And then all you got to remember is, man, I signed up for a race that is going to take me to this place, or I'm excited to see what it's going to do to me physically, mentally. That's going to get you out the door, tying up your shoes, and just onward and upward. So there's one quote that I want to leave you with before we get into tip 6, which is the big one. I've never regretted finishing a run I didn't want to do. So just keep that in mind for every time you go out there. Okay, tip number 6, the life-changing one. Alright, tip number 6, and I found this out the hard way. And mostly because I'm stubborn, and I got wrapped up into the whole Strava thing, the whole social media thing that you think people expect from you as an ultra runner. Don't let this sport consume you. it is very easy to let every waking thought be wrapped up about running, about your training, about your weekend long run, where you start prioritizing your training over the other stuff that was there before you started running, before you had these goals and these dreams. Goals and dreams are awesome. You should have them. Stick with it. But don't let it consume you. I missed, a couple things in my kids' lives with sporting events that I wish I didn't because I was off running. Or just time with my wife where, I could see it in her face, like, you're going for a run again? And instead of me saying, I'll run later, because, I'm going to get my training in, I'm going to stay home right now and spend time with you. Or we're going to go on a date and I'll wake up earlier in the morning or I'll stay up later at night to get my runs in. So you have to be flexible with your training. I'm not saying don't do your training, I'm just saying be flexible with it. Don't let it rule other important stuff in your life. As you can see, I surf. And I started having resentment towards my running because, waves would come in and I'd be in the middle of a run thinking, man, if I could just be surfing right now, or this or that, and it would make my run just less than fun. And so what I started to do when waves would come, because waves was one of my passions and is one of the reasons why I started and kept with running, is because I wanted to stay in shape for surfing, not the other way around. That I would go surf in the morning and do my run after, or I would break my runs up. I would do half my run, go surf, and then go do the other half after I got done surfing. So just, again, don't let this consume you. This is an awesome sport. The reason I said this is life-changing is because you're going to find out so much about yourself. When it gets so hard to put one more foot in front of the other, where every part of you is yelling quit, every voice in your head is saying stop, that's where you find out what you're made of. And I found out more times than once that I'm not as tough as I think I am. So, but every race that I finish and every race that I don't finish, a little part of me becomes a little bit tougher, a little bit more resilient, and I'm just stacking these bricks knowing that eventually, one day, I'm going to be able to do something that I never thought I could finish before. So with that, leave it in the comments. Let me know what you're training for. I'd be just really, excited to cheer you on. Talk to you soon. See you on the next one.